Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I hope everybody's doing great today. So we're gonna make some fall colors pen blanks today. And you might notice I'm wearing a hat forward. It doesn't look like, well, I'm a little raccoony, but this one's, it's got a hole in the back and that's just kind of silly. I don't wanna do that. So I forgot about this hat. It's a new Lathe Life one. So I'm gonna wear it forward and I'm gonna, you know, maybe look like a raccoon. It'll be all right. So anyway, fall colors. I've done these blanks once before. I don't think on the stream though. And I'm switching things up a little bit on the color combination. But if you live anywhere where there's some trees, the leaves might be changing a little bit right now. Maybe not yet. I'm not sure if they're really in full swing yet, but it should be pretty quick, I think, pretty soon here. So if you look at like a forest and, you know, while they're changing, you usually get some reds, some yellows or golds, some orange colors, some greens, obviously, and some browns, kind of. So I thought we would put a mix together with those colors. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors. So it should be pretty fun. So I'm going to switch over. We're going to only be doing one batch today. We're going to do a kind of a quickie, but I have got my mom's birthday party to go to after this. So one batch today, but one batch is going to be good enough, I think, for the stream. So here are the color choices that I wanted to go with. We're leaning heavy on the P-Towns because they kind of have the perfect colors. So this tangerine is kind of like the perfect orange for this. It's a little bit duller. It's not like super bright orange. So I like that one for this. And then Cafe Latte is a pretty good brown. A little bit on the lighter side, so I thought that would kind of go together. It's kind of like a bronzish brown. Thought that would be a good one. And then we got wine red. We did this one last week. This is like the perfect kind of that red color that you see in the leaves. So a little bit in the kind of burgundy tones, kind of darker, duller. And then their camo green, that's a great one for the kind of darker greens that you get in leaves. And the last one, this one's kind of an oddball a little bit. I don't know, I'm guessing Eye Candy's got something like this. It's basically like they call this one Aztec. Let me put the lid on so I can show you. They call it Aztec Gold from Pearlex. And it's like a, way back in the day, what's it called? Caster's Choice had one. Do they still? I don't have they had one, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like, what do they call it? Antique gold or something like that? I don't know. This Aztec Gold's the same. I'm sure Eye Candy's probably got something similar. It's just a little bit more like a kind of an oranger gold than like the Olympic. Olympic gold is like really, you know, like your standard kind of gold color. So this is a little bit heavier in the orange arena. Goldenrod is a little bit more yellow. It's less like a gold, more of a kind of a yellow, darker yellow. So P-Town doesn't really have anything in this range. I'm guessing, like I said, something that Eye Candy has is probably the same. I don't know. They got so many, I can't keep track. But I have this one on hand, so I thought we'd go with that one. I thought it'd be a pretty good gold. You know, like I said, duller kind of colors. Probably not bright. You don't really want like the brightest greens and like the bright. You could maybe throw in like a bright green because like for the ones that haven't changed yet, I guess. But typically for fall colors, you want kind of duller palette. So it should be pretty cool. Let's see here. Who was here first? I'm curious. Michael McEwen was here. And we got Jennifer and Brian's here, and we figured out I totally had everything in my cart. I don't know if anybody was paying attention last week. I was like, yeah, I should have an order of bushings coming. And Brian's like, I don't think I have an order. I went and looked, and I remembered I had things in my cart. I was ready to check out, but then there was one that I'm like, do I already have that one stashed somewhere? And then I totally forgot to place the order. They're probably going to be here on Monday at this point, maybe even today, I don't know. So we figured out the missing bushing order. We got Vinny's here, Mark's here. Who else? Homer Lex. And let's See, Jennifer's here, and David Bingham, and who else? Who else? Barb's here. And if I missed you, I apologize. Ann's here. I don't think I'm seeing any questions or anything, so I'm kind of just really quickly skimming. Harold's here. I think that's it. In Vegas today, oh man. Yeah, not close. It's an 8-hour drive from Vegas up to here. It's crazy because like there's absolutely nothing else in Nevada. There's like northern Nevada, you know, like the kind of Reno Tahoe area. There's Vegas. And I mean, really, there's not much else in the middle. I mean, like Tonopah's in the middle. It's tiny. And then you got like Elko and Ely's out on the, you know, out by on the east side. And even that's like a good 5-hour drive, I think. Like to cross the state east to west is like no joke. And really, there's not much going on in Elko and Ely. They're fairly small. Yeah, you know, it's bigger than anything else, I guess. But yeah, going north to south, it's like, I mean, I think I've made it in about 6 hours when I was in college, but realistically, it's like a 7 to 8 hour drive. So let's see here. Come have a beer, 90 miles. Not too bad, not too bad. All right, so let's get rolling here. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to mention. I'm wearing my Alumilite. Good thing I remembered this. I pulled out my Alumilite. So you guys know the saga of the what's up with my resin. It seems like something's wrong. And again, I don't want to scare anybody. Like, I was just getting slightly odd results with things. Everything cured fine. Everything was doing okay. It's just like the patterning just looked kind of garbagey. It wasn't what I normally do. So I got fresh resin from Chad, and the results seemed better with that. It wasn't like super apparent, but it was still hot kind of in the shop. And so I ended up contacting Alumilites. Well, I talked to my supplier, but she pointed me over to the tech support, and through talking to them, we both kind of agree that there was probably some sort of a moisture contamination issue. And this happened in my shop. This wasn't like I got a bad batch or something. It wasn't like that. Somehow I either left the like breather cap open maybe a little bit, or it just wasn't fully closed, and you know, moisture can get into your resin. And if that happens, you're going to get some kind of funky results. Like things were just kind of foamy here and there, and like things were just weird. There was a lot more air bubbles, which that's what really caused me to think like, I think there's like a moisture thing. But I mean, the ambient humidity in the shop is negligible. So it's not that. It's just that there was something happened, and I don't know. And it was like a user error or something happened, because I think it was working just fine when I got it. There was no leaks. So all that said, what I want to mention is it's important to make sure that you seal your jugs well, like fully seal them when you're done, and don't leave them open for extended periods of time in your shop. That can introduce, especially like over time, you know, if you leave the cap off for 20 minutes, like every day for a week, you're going to get problems. Eventually, it's going to cause some issues. So, especially when you're dealing with urethanes, pour out what you need to pour out, and put that lid on and make sure that it's tight. So I've got more resin coming. Luckily, the temperatures in the shop are finally going down. So I'm going to probably in a couple weeks, I won't be using the fridge or anything like that. There's no need to. It should stay kind of 68 to 75 in the shop for pretty much the rest of the time. Even if it does get kind of warm for like a week, it's probably not going to significantly affect things. That's the weird thing about storing resin. I was doing fine into July, leaving it out. And part of the reason for that was the temperature in the shop was getting down far enough. So it's kind of a weird thing where it's not just about what is the temperature in the shop. It kind of, I don't know, it's weird. I can't even explain it. But once we get to a certain point in the shop, which is like for about a month, things become less fun for me, because it just doesn't get low enough overnight at like ever in the mornings. and it's getting up into like the 80s, you know, and at that point, that's when I start seeing issues. Now, it's not terrible. You can still pour stuff. We did, you know, perfectly fine blanks all summer, but I do think that the refrigerating it kind of helped. But I also want to mention, when I was talking to Chad about this, you might, if it's like, chilling the resin, getting the temperature like really low, and then pulling it out into like above 80, 90 degree weather. Like if you're in like the 90s, I don't know if refrigerating it like down to like 50, 60 degrees is a great idea, because that temperature shift as you pull it out, you may get some condensation issues that also may cause some problems. So I don't know what the answer is. If your shop is like really hot, it's just not a great, you know, situation basically. Like I just find like once you break above like 85 degrees, urethanes are just not very fun. I think you're almost better off using epoxies at that point. So anyway, just wanted to kind of give you an update. I think everything's solved. I've actually been getting, even with the old resin, I think with the temperatures going down, things have actually just been better, even with that stuff, but it's still a little bit off. So new resin coming and everything should be A-okay from now on. So let's see here. No other questions? Let's get to some resin casting. So we're going to go with the Beast today. I love this Beast. You got what do they call it? A 5 3/8. It doesn't even say. There it is. 5 3/8 by 3/4. Which way? 5 3/8. You get 12 blanks, and Turner's Warehouse has these as well as P-Town Subby. So pretty good mold if you want to knock out quite a few blanks. And these work really well, especially for doing your like color swirls. You can just kind of get all crazy with it and have fun. Let's see here. Got our things here. I'm going to move them over. Move that right there. And then we'll get our cups out. So first things first, of course, we're going to write down some notes and make sure that we can redo these if we need to. So the date today is 9/27. So if you're a baseball fan, things are really heating up this last week, man. Tell you what. The wild card situation is pretty crazy. We don't even know who's playing who for the most part, but the Dodgers got in, so we're happy about that. Let's see here. So 9/27, we're doing fall colors. I like to like name the thing. We're doing 1, so I don't need to put any numbers. So I've been mixing up about 540 grams for this. So we'll continue with that trend. I'm going to do 5. Let me see where we're at here. So, yeah, that's fine. All right, we're going to do 550. I might have a little left over that we can pour into that little thing. So we're doing the Beast mold, and we're doing clear slow. All right, so we got 5 colors. So we got, looks like, yep, 110 per, and I think even amounts is a pretty good idea. Oops, 110, 110, 110, 110, and then we're going with Cafe Latte. We're going with Wine Red, Tangerine, and Aztec Gold. Like I said, I don't know exactly which one that is, but I'm pretty sure that Eye Candy probably has something like this. It's kind of tough because even if you look online, they do a good job of showing all the different colors, but like trying to match something from a different brand to one of their colors, that's where things get a little bit more difficult. You probably need to get like a bunch of different samples to figure it out. And the last, throwing mica powders. Last one is Camo Green. This should be a pretty good one. Camo Green. All right, so we're going to do ½ teaspoon of each. And I'm going to probably put, it kind of depends. See, now that temperatures are also falling, now it's kind of screwing up my like what temperature should you pour at kind of thing. So I think 100 degrees is probably good right now with the chilled stuff. We could even do the stuff that's sitting out. I wonder, what is that? 74. Yeah. 12, 27. Yeah, I think we're gonna do. Yeah, never mind. We're doing the chilled one just because. That's the one that's the newer one, so I want to go with the newest resin that I have. So we're going to try and pour around 100. Maybe, honestly, 95 might even be good right now because it's well, I guess it is 74. Yeah, so I think 100 is probably good. 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And we'll give it a little bit of a swirly do. So let's see, is there any other questions before I get going here? Chicken egg blue. I know, I saw, I had it on in the background and I saw the graphics, they're hilarious. How many drops? I was telling Gretchen, because he was like, oh, I don't measure anything, I just look at it. And I always find it, I get it, but the problem that I have with that is if it didn't work out right, like if you're like, oh man, I wish next time I should have added more. The problem that I have is if you don't take notes and you don't know how much you put in, then the next time you're very likely to just get the same results. And I don't know. I get it. I'm super anal, but if I cooked also, like I wouldn't just be like, oh, it's just a pinch, I'll just grab some salt and whatever. Like I would kind of have notes because I don't want to do this over and over and have not good results, you know? So, because that's what I used to do. I guess that you know, this is the reason that I'm pretty crazy about doing, you know, specific amounts, is because for probably the first year that I was casting, I was like, oh, whatever, I don't know, just let me grab the, you know, I grab a popsicle stick of mica powder and just, yeah, it looks okay to me, I don't know. Or I dump in some dyes, you know, and the problem was I was having such inconsistent results that I would end up having to pour like 5 batches to get the right thing. And then I still wouldn't even have written it down, so I don't know what the right amount was. And it took me like a year to finally be like, you know what I should do is write down all this stuff and measure it out. And that changed my whole existence, you know? And so that's why I'm like, oh, just measure it. Why not? Why wouldn't you just measure it? So it's funny. Yeah, but if you wanted to, you know, that's I think the thing. And if I was just doing bowls or stoppers and things like that, if that's all that I was doing, and I can't remember what he was pouring. So I wasn't really watching. I was just kind of in the background doing other stuff this morning. But I did see the chicken egg graphic thing. That was hilarious. But if you're doing pen blanks, you know, dealing with how much mica powder you put in really affects the way that pen blanks, if you're drilling out the center, it really affects them. And if you don't do it right, they don't really look that good. So I guess I'm very biased on that stuff. I think I would definitely not care so much if I was doing one-off pieces like bowls and stopper blanks, like bigger things where that transparency doesn't really matter. That's where I agree. I don't think it really matters what you put in there, how much, and taking a bunch of notes. However, if I wanted to recreate the thing someday, I would love to have that written down. That's my thing. So I'm just, you know me. I don't think that if you want to get, if it's important to you, I don't care what you do, what anybody else does. It's a little bit crazy to me. That's all. I just, when people are like, whatever. If you do want repeatable results, then I highly recommend that you measure things out. That's my only thing, because otherwise you're going to find frustration is going to be what ends up happening. I'm going to go with this cup. It's a little smoother. That's all. That's all. I'll get off my soapbox now. All right, so let's cast some blanks here. So we're doing two, let's see here. I need to mix up another little tip, and this is something that I was finding this summer. I think the temperatures can affect some of these dyes. I don't even think it was the dyes. Something was going on, and it may have had to do with the resin. I don't know. It all coincided, but for a long time, if I just needed to do two colors, and I was doing I was doing a lot of testing, right? And so I was using this little small 6 blank mold, and it only holds like 300 grams, maybe something like that. Not even that. It's like 270, 280, something like that. And so you could put 280 grams in one cup and mix it up. And so that's much simpler. I would just use this as my mixing cup and then dump off half. The problem was, and these cups are not the greatest because they got all these little button, like things and stuff, ridges. They're not the greatest. They can trap part A or part B or something like that. So I kind of recommend, if you want the best results. So anyway, what was happening was I was getting pockets of uncured resin, like there was just dye coming out when I was doing the test turning. And so what I switched to, and I haven't had any issues, is I have a mixing cup, and it's good to have one of these like paint mixing cups that are smooth. Another option for a smooth cup that would probably be better than the plastic ones for this case. I find the plastic ones to be fine for just, dumping out, but your paper cups are pretty flat. You don't really get like areas where you could trap part A or part B. But either way, it's going to be best if you mix up your resin in one cup and then dump it off. Because if there is anything unmixed in that cup, whatever, doesn't really matter. And then you're going to remix these once you put, your colorants in. So it does give you a couple, if you have a separate mixing cup, it gives you like another round of mixing, and you're less susceptible to having any areas where there's like uncured resin bits. It was kind of weird. I've had that issue. That only happens to me in the summer also, which is also another, but that has happened in the past. So always best to just mix in one cup and then dump it all off. If you can. What am I doing? 55, 52. So yeah, I need to mix up 280 times 2. Always best to try and get the best results you can. I went a little over there. Chad's here. What's up, man? Chad found me some bionic legs so that I can run again. David's here. Let's see. David has a question. Ordered some paste pigments, but have no clue amounts to mix. Well, just do what Jake does and just add it until you're happy. I would not go over 5% of whatever the total resin amount is. That kind of goes for any of them, really. Most manufacturers kind of recommend that. I did experiments with mine, and while I found that you could, I put like 20% in or something like that, and it's still cured. But what ends up happening is the more of that stuff that you put in, you end up, the blanks end up a little bit softer. Even at like 4 or 5%, it's probably going to be a little bit softer. Just a hair, compared to something that didn't have that much, pigment paste in it. So that would be my recommendation, I think. Typically for many of them, some of them are more, the problem is if it's got a lot of white in it, then you can use a lot less to get it opaque. And so I guess it kind of depends on what are you trying to do. You know, what's your goal with it? But if you're trying to go for opaque, the ones that have more white in it are going to require less, because the titanium dioxide stuff, that's what they use for white and everything. That stuff is very larger particles. And it tends to be opaque quicker. So like chicken egg blue doesn't really require much. There's a lot of white in that one. But the army green and the navy blue, from my line, those two are much more transparent. So you need to get to like 2.5%, 3% probably to get it, opaque in like a pen blank. And then again, if you're not drilling out the center, it depends on how much, if you're making a stopper, you don't need quite as much. You don't need nearly as much. So I would, depending on what it is, I would try like 1% to 2%, see what happens, and keep notes, and then go from there. Yeah, a little glitter does go a long way. Pigment paste and dye. Well, see, and these terms are all kind of, depends on what you're talking about. So like, most of the opaque things that are similar to mine, call it a pigment paste or whatever you want, but it's just an opaque pigment, liquid pigment. Those are all the same thing, basically. So they all kind of fall under the same umbrella. Dyes, like the transparent alumilite dyes, those are totally different. They're see-through, and so it's kind of a different thing for the most part. But I would kind of lump all the like quote-unquote pigment pastes or liquid pigments or whatever into the same kind of category. They're all pretty similar. What am I doing? I need a 1/2 teaspoon. Let's see, we're doing half for each one. So I'm gotta quit talking. A little less talk, lot more action, huh? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I tend to lean towards going opaque with things, because I don't really like painting tubes and doing all that mess. But it is very fun, especially if you're doing the bespoke pens. Then you can have a field day. Transparent stuff really goes a long way. It's like really cool in those, because there's no tubes and all that stuff typically, unless you're doing some sort of a very complicated one of those with the mounting tube and all that in the back. I don't think most people are doing that kind of stuff though. Let's see here, we got a little bit of orange here. I'm going to do a little bit more there. And another, so I was kind of soapboxing the amounts. I think it's a lot less important with mica powders. You just kind of get to a point and you're generally good. And they can all kind of be a little bit different, but I think you got a lot more variance with mica powders. But if you're going for a very specific thing with some of these, dyes, liquid pigments and stuff, sometimes you kind of need to be a little bit more accurate with things. But generally, you can kind of get a good idea. If you look at the stir stick, that stir stick method thing, that tells you a lot. Like you should be able to figure out what's going on. Just looking at the stick, it generally tells you enough. If you can see the stick through the mica powder, whatever it is, the paste, when you just kind of pull it out. Now, plastic stir sticks don't work as well. You know, it's nice to be able to, if you can see the wood grain on like a popsicle stick through your mica powder, then it's not opaque. It's gonna show the tube. So that's like the best test, and then you can just kind of wing it if you're doing that pretty well. Okay, so let's see here. I'm just curious where we're at temperature-wise. Pretty low, that's what I figured. It's so much nicer when it's cooler in the shop. It's almost too, it's starting to get to the point where it's actually too cool to be chilling the resin, because it's gonna, what that does is it's gonna also increase the, I don't need to do that, yeah, I kind of do. It's gonna increase the amount of working time that I have, so I'm gonna be standing around doing nothing for a long, you know, quite a bit longer. So I need 110 in each one of these cups. I didn't need these giant cups, I guess. Could have gotten with smaller ones. And this is where, like, I don't really care that much if I have 110 grams in each one of these things. And a much easier way, especially if you're trying to save time, is just fill one and then kind of eyeball the level in the other ones. So for anybody that can't stand my weighing everything, this is an easy way to get pretty similar. But if you're OCD like me, then now we got the green and it's super low. Because I went a little higher on the red and all these other ones. So it depends on your level of OCD. But I would say all these fun colors are a little bit more the fall color thing anyway. So if I have one that's low, green would be my choice probably. Let's see, I'm gonna stop real quick and see. Did Zach just say chicken egg blue? It's official. Why do you use a time? I don't have a timer. This is a temperature gauge. What this does is, so Joseph was asking, what you need to do if you're trying to mix a bunch of colors together. If I just mixed in my pigment, which I need to mix this pigment in. If I mixed, got this stuff all mixed in and then just dumped it straight into the mold, the problem is every resin has some amount of working time where it's, just thin liquid resin. And at the end of the working time, it starts thickening up and eventually it just hardens. That's how resin works. There is a window of time where it starts thickening up and it's going to hold together better. So if you're pouring all these different colors together, you're waiting for this period where, what I call the gel period, where you're not going to get all these colors just bleeding together. And it has to do with the viscosity of the resin. However, the easiest way to get repeatable results is to know what temperature the resin is to pour at. And if you need to figure out your window, what I recommend doing, because every resin's different. If I told you what I'm pouring at for this, and you've got a different resin, it's going to mean absolutely nothing for the most part. And your shop temperature and all kinds of other factors will change things. So generally, I don't recommend that you just kind of follow whatever I did. But if you're using Alumilite Clear Slow, typically you wait till about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, depending on the temperature in your shop. But if it's like room temperature, around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 95 or so is usually a pretty good number, 100 maybe. And as the temperature in your shop goes up, you're going to probably need to wait for a higher temperature of the resin. I do. And so all of this coincides with when the resin is actually going to turn hard. And so if you're looking to figure out when's the right time to pour, what's the right temperature, what I recommend doing is just getting a cup, putting a couple 100 grams of resin in there, you know, A and B, mix it up, and literally just waste that cup, but have your temperature gauge handy and be looking at what is the viscosity of this stuff. It might help. I don't recommend that you use a timer to do this because how long you stir, and there's a lot of factors, right? And time is really not the most consistent way. Temperature of the resin is probably the best. However, it's nice to know, like once you pour your part B in, hit the timer, and just see how long you've got for working time. And also you need to know what the temperature in your shop is, because that, like I said, these things kind of change. But the best way to do it is just waste a cup of resin to see like how long does it take, what temperatures, at what temperature does it really seem like this stuff is not pourable. That'll kind of give you the upper, you better get it done before this temperature. But it's the best way to do it, I think, if you need to know what it is in your shop. And you still may have to kind of tweak things. I mean, that's not going to necessarily tell you what the results will be with, mica powders, or if you're using liquid pigments. Things can kind of change depending. I usually go for a higher temperature if I'm using liquid pigments, like my, the Color Lab pigments. These operate a little bit differently than mica powders, the pearly stuff. And I find that to keep colors from bleeding, I have to go up about 5, maybe 10 degrees higher, typically. It just tends to work a little bit better that way. So let's see what the temperature is of this cup. So we're at about 99. We're at that 100 degrees. I think that's fine. And just to give you an idea, so like what this looks like a good consistency to me to pour at. It's not doing crazy stuff in the cup. It's kind of keeping the swirls for the most part a little bit. I can maybe wait till 105, I don't know, but I think you have a lot more room. There's a lot more like leniency with mica powders. They tend to not bleed as much as the liquid pigments typically. So if you're new to this, I recommend going with the pearl powders, playing around until you kind of get used to, working with resin in general. And once you kind of got your feet under you, then, go for whatever you want. I think it's harder if you've never done resin casting and then you just pull out liquid pigments. A lot of what you're doing on like the first 5 castings is just figuring out like the steps of like mixing and stuff. And it just becomes really hard if you choose something on the more, look at this color pattern, huh? Can you see that? Whoa, that's gonna look good, guys. That is gonna look wicked good, I think. But it's harder if you choose to do things that are harder. Then not only are you like kind of figuring out how to mix the resin and stuff and dealing with that, like that's something on your brain. In addition to trying to get decent results, and that I find that it makes things a lot more difficult. Like doing very large pours, lots of blanks, doing things like that where it's making everything more difficult. I think that's not a good way to start out. I would rather have you do simpler things that are maybe not as impressive. But once you've gotten a few casting, a few pours under your belt, the like just rudimentary mixing and all that kind of stuff, you're not like, that's not on your brain so much. You're not like, oh, how does this even work? Then you're focusing on like the casting stuff, so it makes more sense to kind of expand into trickier things, so that's always my recommendation. But I think these blanks are going to be pretty awesome. Let me know, did you guys see the thumbnail for this? Let me know if these are matching up to that thumbnail, because seems to me like it is so far. Look at that, perfect amount. Glad I went a little bit over, because if I would have gone less, I would have really had to be scraping the cups out. And I like to overfill these things. If you don't, like, resin is going to have, the mixing and doing all this stuff, it's going to cause air bubbles to be in your resin, and that's why we use the pressure pot to remove those. But the problem is all these air bubbles that are in there take up space, volume, and when you remove all the air bubbles, the level of resin is going to go down. So if you're really trying to get whatever the most blank out of your mold, then you kind of really want to overfill your mold. All right, so I'm just going to use a stick here. I like to get my finger a little bit wet with some resin. And I'm going to go wee, and we're going to go wee, and this is the fun part. And I really like, I'm not going to get probably as mixed as a lot of you guys know, like my regular stick's got a bunch of bends and a crook on the bottom and all this stuff. But man, I'll tell you what, if you're doing 12 blanks, having a straight stick to that you just wipe the stuff off really quickly is certainly nice. And you get pretty good swirling even with a straight stick, I find. But you can kind of play around with the stick that you use and all that. I mean, I still am playing with different shapes and designs. I do like having kind of a little L bend at the bottom, and you can just turn it around. I'm not fully convinced that you need a bunch of bumps above that thing to get significantly different results if you're doing that method. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about in a second here when I get this done. So we got it all kind of mixed up, and the top is going to look like garbage after you do that, because you're kind of pulling off and just pooling a bunch of all those colors together. So don't get freaked out if the top part, after you've like stirred it up, just looks like a mess. The blanks are going to look swirly on the inside and nice. Luckily in this case, like this fall color thing, I mean, whatever. I think a blank that's still going to look good in a pen blank, even though it's kind of all mixed up in there. A little bit kind of muddy. I think that would actually look kind of cool, like a pile of leaves anyway. However, we like our swirls, right? And so the insides of those blanks are going to be kind of nice and swirly with more color separation. It just looks like mud on the top, because after you've swirled it and siphoned off that stuff on the stick, you're just kind of dumping it all into one pool. So don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's not a freakable event. I think the hardest part of resin casting is now we got to sit and wait for like tomorrow at least to figure out, how did it turn out. That's the hardest thing about resin casting, is you just can't get immediate results, feedback on these things. Technically, if you're just doing, so I'm doing all the team colors and all that stuff. If all you're doing is trying to figure out, did it work? I turn blanks the next day on the lathe, as long as I'm not trying to, you know, polish and make a pen out of them. If I just need to see what the result was from a pour, you can absolutely turn it the next day. It's not going to hurt anything. But you do want to wait for the resin to fully cure before you're going to start making a pen and stuff like that, because the resin's going to be soft, number one, and it will shrink over that 5 or 7 days a little bit. So especially if you're making a pen that you're going to mount it to a tube, if you just drilled it out the next day and then mounted it on a tube, most likely it's going to kind of shrink a bit around that tube and possibly even kind of warp it a little bit. So it's always good to wait. Alumilite Clear Slow is a 5-day full cure at like room temperature, 70 degrees or so. It's always good to wait for that, but you're going to get the best polish, because at the end of that 5 days, it's going to be as hard as it's going to get. And the harder it is, the better the gloss is going to be. So, always good, but like I said, if you need to get results, like I just turned a few today to double check that I poured yesterday, and I don't care, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to see what did it look like. But I'm not using it for anything. All right, so there we have it, guys. What do you think of those fall color blanks? Let's see here. I'm going to scroll down and see what is that gold? So that gold, it's Aztec Gold by Pearlex. Let's go for the overhead camera here. We're pretty zoomed in. Let's flip it the right way. Pearlex Aztec. I don't know. I'm sure that eye candy, I would probably recommend going with an eye candy. I like that company better. Pearlex is just a gigantic company. I would rather support eye candy. I don't know what gold this would be. Let me just check. I can maybe give you it might be this one if you want to go with eye candy. Luckily, their website is great, because it does, you can just click on gold. And I think, do I have, I do. macOS. Properties. See here. Okay, I don't know if I can do this. Oh, here we go. There we go. I'm gonna shrink in this. So we'll look together. So let's get this ad out of the way. So you can go into their pigments and then just pick gold. And let's see if, see, this is what I mean. Like, you're looking at this picture and you're like, okay, they all look like gold. Maybe Zarin. Aura, maybe? I gotta be honest, guys. I don't know. They all look the same. Kula. I would probably say either, I don't know. I'm gonna show you the, it's in the orange range. So like I said, I've never used Kula or Aura. Honestly, any of the 14 karat I've done, but I don't, I have Koga. It's definitely not Koga. That one's dark. Yeah, maybe even Krista Gold. I think it's one of those. More in the, like the orange, darker range would be pretty similar. But if all else fails, guys, it's just Aztec Gold from Pearlex. You can get it on their website too. So let's go back to the intro. And I got to get over to here. There's more, yeah, like I said, I just quickly, I just wanted to kind of, because I don't know, looking on a screen, I have no clue which one's which. So hopefully somebody else knows their golds a little bit better. let's see. Let's see here. I'm just. So hopefully I answered that question for Joseph. Yeah, the stir stick method, so Harold was saying getting a better idea for the stir stick method. That works pretty well to tell if you're, you know, in the ballpark of opaque. I would say that for me, most, if you want like if you're anal like me and you want to do like the teaspoon thing, I've found that for 100 grams of resin, half a teaspoon is usually pretty good for making it opaque. So half teaspoon of mica powder per 100 grams of resin. That's a pretty good ballpark if you just want to not be like, I don't know, there's, you know, I'm just dumping powder in there. I've found that for most of them, the problem is there's a lot of the golds are very see-through to the point where like you could dump the whole bottle in there and I don't think it's still going to be opaque. Like you're going to see the tube. Luckily for golds, if you've got a brass tube under there that you're trying to hide, I don't care if the tube shows through, like the color of it. It's going to get to the point where it's not like you're going to see the tube. It's just if you had like a dark blue or something and then you got like some gold peeking through, it just doesn't look good. But if you've got gold mica powder, and then you're really just not going to see, you know, if you get it to the point where it's pretty opaque looking in the cup, then it doesn't really matter if you see brass tube under gold pigment. A lot of the greens I find are like the very light greens. Those tend to be like one of those where you could dump the whole carton in there and it's still going to show brass. So just be aware of that. I would say it's always best to just paint the tube or use the powder coated. I love the powder coated tubes from Turner's Warehouse because I can just slap it together without having to be like, oh, I got to paint the tube. So I like that. The problem is they only have certain ones. You may notice that I make a lot of cigars, juniors, and Sierras. That's because you can get powder coated tubes for them and I don't have to worry about it. And I just like those kits. You know, they're popular and easy. But so if in doubt, especially if you're making, you got one blank, it's made with mica powders, and like you got to make sure that this pen is good. Like you don't have a redo. You don't want to redo it. Just paint the tube and just move on, even if you think it was opaque. That's my recommendation. Let's see here. 3 months. What was the question? 3 months? I'm not sure what why you guys are saying 3 months. Oh, shelf life. Yeah, I think it's three to 4 months. For the most part, I've found that it can extend beyond their, you know, what they say. The big thing is if you've got like 6-month-old resin and you're like, I don't know if it's good or not, just mix up a little bit, and if it cures, fine, clear. Don't put anything in it. Just mix up a little bit of, you know, part A and part B. If everything turns out fine, then it's fine. You know, if nothing odd happens, you should be good. No, it's definitely not 6 months. They keep lowering it. So I think it's like 3 to 4. Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. Definitely looks like fall colors. Yes. Sweet. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. So next week we'll turn one of those blanks up and see how this thing turns out. I'm gonna have to pick a kit for this. I have purchased new kits, so I'm very excited about that. Number one. I've got some new things to make. I might go for the one kit that I kind of like is the Virage like rollerball version. That one's kind of neat. It's like a smaller, lighter like rollerball. Like not to say, but I think it's probably it's good for women. I think it's just a little bit like it's dainty-ish, you know, like I said, a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. So I might do one of those. That would be pretty good. Yeah, the green-orange contrast is going to be good. Let's see here. Yeah, Eye Candy is a great company. My two favorites are P-Town and Eye Candy. I like the P-Town ones. Fred picked really good colors. Like their line, I mean, I use most of them, many of them, and they all turn out great. Which, you know, there's lots of mica powder companies out there, and you know, and the thing about Eye Candy is they've literally got every color is number one. If you need a color, they got it, probably. And they can even sometimes, at least in the past, I don't know if today, because they're a little bit bigger, a little bit busier, but they might even, if you need some specific thing, they might even be willing to actually try to make it for you, to get it. If they don't have it already, they might make it. So Eye Candy is pretty awesome and great people. But P-Town, their lineup is just excellent. And I also, one of the things that I like about P-Town is you can get these giant jugs of them. That makes me happy. So, but like I said, the colors are good. So those are the two that I generally go with. But Pearlex is a good brand. They've been around forever. They work well. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And I mean, really, most mica powders are fine. Like mica powders are kind of mica powders, but I do think that you're kind of guaranteed to get good results if you go with the Pearlex, Eye Candy, or P-Town. I know that you're going to get good stuff. I'm sure there's lots of other brands out there that are fine too. Mark, would a copper or bronze hardware? Ooh, yeah, that would be pretty cool. Kind of like that bronze. Yeah, either one of those would probably be pretty good. Yeah, the lighter pens, they're just nice. And I think that, I don't want to be like sexist, but I do think women have generally smaller hands, and they just tend to work better for women. I like using it too, though, and I don't have like overly gigantic hands or anything like that, but it also feels great in my hand. The kit, it also just has kind of a little bit of a feminine look to it, but it's a great one. So I might pull one of those out. I need to see what I have though. So I think that's it. I don't see any other questions or anything like that. But so I'll post a reel of me. Find the pot. Where's my blanks? That's never happened to me before. I'll post a reel pulling these guys out when I pop them. As you guys know, the vertical casting, you know, when you're pouring them into a vertical tube as opposed to like a brick like this, the outsides of the blank don't. I'll give you guys an example. For anybody that hasn't like seen this, and it looks like there's a few newbies in here. So this is a blank. This is my Badgers colors, the red and white. So here's the pen blank. This is what came out of the mold. And you know, I mean, that doesn't look super amazing. Here's what they look like though on the inside. So, you know, the insides are gonna definitely be different when you're dealing with these vertical ones, which that's one of the tough things. That's one of the reasons why I stayed away from doing vertical pour blanks for so long, because if you pour a brick, you're forced to cut them. And so you know exactly what's on the inside after you've cut a brick of blanks. And that's why I stuck with those for so long. But, you know, it's so much easier to cut vertical ones, and you know, they're already round if you're doing bespoke pens. Makes it a little bit easier, and you're wasting a lot less resin. Like this mold, so just to let you guys know, this mold holds the same amount of resin. I use the same amount of resin as I would have for this. This makes 6 blanks. This makes 12. Okay, so that just tells you how much resin savings you can get. And I was making the same size, the 3/4 inch. But then on top of it, you know, you sell it to somebody and they're knocking off all the corners, which is just going to fall on the floor. So it's just a lot of wasted resin with the bricks. But there are certain things that you can't do vertically, you know, so, and they look a little bit different depending on what you want. So let's see here. I think that's about it. Yeah. So, yeah. So we'll see. Mike, like the, I lost my blanks. So I'll post a reel or a short, you know, on YouTube, all that kind of stuff of the demolding of these guys. Can't wait to see them. And the next Saturday, I will be making a pen out of one, and then the rest of them are going to be going into the Pen Blank Club boxes. So that'll be the first blank for this month, or next month, however you want to call it. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining the fun tonight. I thought it was pretty fun. I'm very excited to see how these things turn out. Like I said, I have made a similar blank in the past. So I am a little bit biased. I think that I was pretty happy with them before, but like I said, I did change things up on this one. So I'm excited to see how these ones look compared. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a great rest of the evening. Get in the shop and do a little bit of resin casting if you can, or some turning. And I'll see you guys all on the next